the support staff here, certainly Clark and Andy and Mark for all their support and trusting in me and my staff. I want to thank the coaches. I know that they spend a lot of time when they get back from the last game of the season. They'll come back and they have a lot of stuff on their plate in regards to putting together the practice plans for the OTAs and then the training camp coming up. So them taking time out of their day to meet with us and to go over these prospects. And then lastly, our training staff, same deal, where they're in there day in and day out working on players on our roster that need rehab. But for those guys to take time out of their day and to travel to Indy and get the notes and to continue to update us as the process goes along with the pro days, they've been obviously a huge help in this. And then lastly, my staff, they have just been amazing all season with the work they've done coming into this process with a lot of draft picks, a lot of different scenarios. Guys were just amazing and can't thank them enough. So with that, we'll open up for questions.
Let's go first to Herbie Tiopi. Go ahead, Herbie.
Hey, Brett, good morning. It's still morning. Good morning. Hope you got some rest after the long weekend.
Yeah, for sure. Here and there. Hey, Brett, I'll catch up this weekend.
Brett, I'll have two questions here. Brett, I'm going to take you back to the last offseason. You had joked that you had determined by halftime of the Super Bowl that you wanted to upgrade the offensive line. With 7 defensive picks out of your 10 picks in this year, when did you know that you had to focus on defense?
I mean, listen, I think it was always at the forefront. I don't know if it was as a dramatic of a mindset like what we experienced in the Super Bowl. That was just kind of a perfect storm of guys that had played a lot of football for us, in particular the tackle position that got hurt, one that ended up retiring, and we got really old really quick. And that was a situation where when you combine that with the best player in the league and a franchise quarterback, I mean, that's kind of let's go. This obviously, I mean, we have to have balance on both sides of the football, and we wanted to, upgrade the youth, the talent, and the depth on the defensive side. We also did some stuff offensively in free agency. We brought in Juju, and we brought in MVS, and we brought in Rojo, and we were able to re-sign Henne and Wiley. So, I think we look at things on both ends, both the draft and free agency, and certainly the draft was geared more toward defense. And I think it's a combination of us wanting to certainly get better and get deeper and younger. But, had we not been able to sign the Schusters and the MVSs and the Rojos, I mean, maybe it deviates a little, but I think it's just a combination of both processes.
So lastly here, Brett, Lonnie Johnson, the trade last night. Why him? Was he someone that you had focused on before the draft, or this just became available after the draft?
Well, I think it came up, I think that there was a little bit of dialogue during the trade deadline. Trade deadlines are tricky because when you're not with the team in the offseason, during training camp and, the playbook and just that cohesiveness is not there. It's a little bit tricky. Melvin Ingram was a little bit different because he had played so long in the league, and he's a guy that, I think was a little bit of an outlier. Sometimes those guys are. So I think it kind of picked up there. And then once the draft ended, we had just stayed in contact. And look, we've been in contact with these teams before the draft. So we always have the initial phone call, which is let us know what you're thinking of doing early on, moving up or moving down. And then as the draft goes on, let us know if there's any players that, you may be willing to move for either a pick this year or next year, what have you. So we just kind of make a note of all those conversations. And he was a guy that, his name had gotten brought up, and we did have some extensive experience with him. I mean, Coach House was here. We went through the process with Lonnie coming out. I mean, he was with him at Kentucky, and then obviously Justin played with him in Houston. So we were able to, talk to both people. And I think Lonnie was in a situation where he was bounced around from corner to safety, back to corner, back to safety. And I just say, look, we're pretty good here at safety, and between Justin and Juan and now Brian Cook and Deion Bush, we're good. And, we have some corners we like, but we also like big, long press corners. We know he can press. We know he's physical. And I think he'll come in here and compete. And like I said, we feel good in regards to what we have in Trent and Sneed. Fenton's a guy that obviously we're high on and we're very confident in. I mean, he's going to go. He's going through a little bit of a rehab now, so hopefully we get him for the start of training camp. But I think from what we did at the end of the draft to the late round picks, mid, I think we pulled the trigger there in the mid rounds, and then a couple late round corners plus Lonnie. I think we'll have a ton of competition now for those 3, 4, 5 spots.
Go next to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Brett, just wanted to ask you about Justin Ross. Can you give us an update on where he is medically and how much you expect from him on the field this weekend and during OTAs and minicamp, and then once camp starts? And what are your expectations for him once the season begins? And Brett, I'll have a second question as well.
Yeah, I think with Justin, everyone kind of knows the story. He's certainly a really talented individual that had gone through his share of injuries at Clemson. And, one thing, if we kind of go back to last year in the Trace Smith setup, I mean, I've always said that our docs are on the more conservative side. And, we spent a lot of time, and I know our docs at KU spent a lot of time talking to the experts that dealt with Justin. And, he's cleared. And I think I think when you take away the neck situation, and again, our docs did a great job of exhausting all the information. And I think for me, it's a little easier on how I operate. I know how good our medical staff is, both Rick and his crew and the docs we have at KU, that if they tell me yes, I feel good. If they tell me no, I don't try to become a doctor all of a sudden and try to say, well, this team said this and that. No, if our docs say good, we're good. And Rick and his staff said they're good. I think one of the things that popped up was a foot. And so that hindered him late in the season. And then I think, he really didn't have time to test and train. I think it was a combination of a lot of things why he fell. And obviously most of it had to do with, a couple seasons ago with the neck, but I think then you throw in the foot and not having time to test. But listen, I know his agent very well, Torrey Dandy. It was Sammy Watkins' agent, and we stayed in touch as the draft went on. And then when the draft ended, he was just kind of going through some different options, and we just stayed in touch. And then yesterday we just we connected again, and he had a chance to just review all the offers in the landscape of where everything was, and he decided to come here. So as far as expectations, I mean, it's like a lot of these guys. I mean, whether you're a first round pick or second round pick, I mean, you got to come in here and learn the playbook, and you have to have the confidence in the coaching staff to execute your assignment. You have to have the confidence in Pat, for him to trust you to execute your assignment. And if he can do that, I mean, I think talent wise, as long as he stays healthy, he'll have a shot. But it'll just come down to him and how he handles the playbooks and being moved around and staying healthy and being diligent in regards to looking ahead and preventative things that he can do for his body. But I mean, there's a lot of these guys that are really in the same boat, in that when you come in here, it's a combination of talent, being smart, staying on top of the training. And that means when you're away from the facility too. So like a lot of these young guys, if he does those things, given the talent he has, I mean, he should be able to come here and potentially contribute. But I think that's the beauty of a 90-man roster, where guys get to come in and we always felt like we'll keep the best players, and it doesn't matter where you're drafted or where you were selected. I mean, if you guys if that individual is going to come in here and earn a spot in the team, we'll be good with that. But I just think it'll be a very interesting competition for only 5 or 6 spots, and I think we have a lot of talent there.
All right, thanks for that. And also, hey, I know you still could add a guy or 2 or 3 before camp starts. I know you made the move with Melvin Ingram yesterday. He's obviously one guy you have an eye on, but largely your roster is set here now. Are you feeling pretty good? Is this group good enough to get you guys to where you want to go?
Well, I feel pretty good about the work we did in the offseason. I mean, we had a lot of things that we had to accomplish, and I feel good about our approach. I feel good about the plan we had. I mean, it was tricky, especially when the receiver market went crazy. And, proud of my group for it being able to just adapt and adjust. And I think we did that. And so I feel good about where we were from the Cincinnati game through free agency and through this draft. I feel really good, and I'm really excited about not just the talent that we added to the team, but I think, the quantity. I think we added a lot of good talent. But I don't know if you ever really feel confident, and you see it year in and year out. I mean, so much revolves around some, injury luck and staying healthy. And I don't think a lot of teams would have interviewed the Bengals and said, do you feel good that you guys can compete for a Super Bowl? And I don't know how many people would have believed them, but I mean, that's why this league is so great. I mean, feel good on paper. Yeah. But there's so many things that can happen. Injuries is one, how these young guys develop, how quickly they develop. We got a young roster. And I remember going back in 19, we made all those moves and ended up winning the Super Bowl, started off slow on the defense. There could be a transitional period here with these guys too. I mean, you're talking about a rookie corner and a rookie linebacker, a rookie defensive end, a safety that we brought in from Houston. I mean, it's a lot of moving parts here. So, I mean, it looks good on paper, but there's a ton of work that has to be done. And this is the first part, these OTAs, getting everybody on the same page, but it's going to take a lot of work. But I think we have the guys, and I think we have the wiring to be really good. How that all plays out is, remains to be seen. But I think, given our track record, given our coaching staff, and given the fact that we have 15, I feel, optimistic, I'll say.
Next to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, Brett, thank you for doing this. I have a question about the secondary, but very quickly, the Fenton rehab that you referenced, is that just like a back cleanup?
I think at a shoulder, I'm sure Rick will talk about that either after OTAs or before. It's something that I think he'll be ready for training camp, but, we certainly want to get some guys out here and be ready to roll and be in position to kind of know what we have.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then you guys spent the 3 picks on defensive backs, the 4th rounder on Joshua Williams. What did you like about Williams, first cornerback in the 4th round since Snead? And then just as a whole, you guys threw a lot at defensive backs, including the trade. Is that just a strategy of like, let's get a lot of guys in camp and sort of see what sticks with, Dave Merritt and Steve Spagnuolo and rounding out that room?
Yeah, probably a combination of all those ideas. Going back to the Williams kid that we took in the 4th, I think the small school guys are always a little tricky, obviously, because of the level of competition. One of the things that stood out with him was first, the pro day and the combine works and how he looked moving in his time and testing. And I think when you go back to the Senior Bowl, it's always encouraging to see a guy struggle. I think he struggled early on and he looked like he didn't belong there. But as the week went on, you saw that, you saw that grit and you saw that toughness play out, where it's easy for a small school guy to come in there and not have success early on, and then to just kind of go in the tank, or the old hamstring sore, calf sore, we're good. And then you get the agent and get all the excuses of, but it wasn't like that. I mean, he struggled early on and he kept fighting and battling. And then we brought him in for an in-house interview, and really smart individual, and understood a great deal of our playbook. Just think that this is a kid that, like you said, Pete, when Dave gets his hands around these guys and Steve gets to work with him, that we think, may take some time, but I mean, he's a big corner. He's smart. He's athletic. He's got size, and some of those things, the size and length you can't coach. So we just think that he's got a real shot. And like I said, we kind of feel real good about Trent, obviously. And then we think with this kid, how he's wired, how he kind of progressed over the the spring season here with the evaluation processes, and then meeting him in person, we felt good about him. And then, the guys that we took late are guys that, it's going to be really hard when you draft 2 corners. Okay. So as a GM, you know how this works. When you call agents, the first thing they do is they look at who you drafted, right? So when you draft 2 corners, it's hard to come back and get, you might get a guy or 2, but it's hard to get a bunch of guys when you just drafted 2 corners. And you have some guys coming back like Fenton and like Snead. So we just felt like it was going to be hard. We had to throw more numbers at them at that position. And given the fact that we just drafted 2 corners, it could be not even so much getting outbid by teams for guys. It just could be that they may go to teams that didn't draft any corners or only drafted 1. So we just thought it made sense to throw some additional numbers at it. And we like both players, and we think both players we drafted late have a ton of upside.
Let's go next to Aaron Ladd. Go ahead, Aaron.
Hey, Brett, appreciate you doing this. I have 2 questions like everyone else. I'll start off with Melvin's tender. How long did you know that you wanted to utilize that strategy? And maybe do you have a hunch on which way he's leaning?
Well, that's something our cap guys, Brent Tills and Chris Shea, do a great job of. It was an idea. was an idea or concept that we talked about, I would say maybe a week or two before the draft, just as a possibility. And then we decided to do that. As far as where he stands, it's always a little bit different and unique with these veteran guys. I mean, Melvin's a guy that he's played a lot of football. He's accomplished a lot. And, I don't think he's in a rush. And we knew that when the free agency period started, that he wouldn't be in a rush, that he would take his time. If it made sense for him, he would do something. We've been in contact with his agent. If there was something that made sense for us, we would definitely want him back. And I think what this UFA tender does, it allows us the ability to communicate and not have either him or his agent do something without us being in the mix. And I think that's what we wanted. We don't know where this is going to go. I can say that we would love to have him back and it would make sense for us, but regardless, I think now it at least allows us a chance to have dialogue with them before they decide to do anything, if they decide to do something somewhere else.
And then your right tackle situation. Do you see Darian Kennard factoring in there? Do you have any hunch on where that's going to go?
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, and that's our plan when we drafted him. There's been a lot of talk as, is he a tackle? Is he a guard? And, I think we feel confident they can play guard, but I mean, you're talking about a guy that has logged a ton of starts at right tackle. There's some cleanup work that he needs to do. We have a great coaching staff. We have a great group of guys in that room that are really experienced. And, but I think, anytime you can go and play right tackle successfully at an SEC level, more often than not, that'll translate to the pro level. Now it'll be a jump, just like all these colleges are, when you're moving from, moving up to the NFL. So it's not like it's going to be easier, but I think if there's one conference that gives you a sense of hope and, a sense of encouragement is, if you can line up at right tackle and I think we all saw that Georgia defensive line last year. If you can line up and play against defensive fronts of that caliber, I mean, you're certainly going to have a shot. Again, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy and it might be rough at the beginning, but I certainly think he's athletic enough. He's certainly long enough and we love his length. Orlando Brown, people thought he wasn't athletic to play tackle, but I think when you have size, length, and you're wired the right way, you put those guys around the right coaching, I think they can become very successful. And I think that's kind of where we're going with Darian.
Last two, we'll go Sarin and then Matt. Go ahead, Sarin.
And Brett, I'll have a follow-up on the same subject of the defensive line. I know your comments, I can't remember if it was either right at the end of the season or from the combine. You said something to the effect of, hey, last year we really focused on the offensive line. We believe in winning in the line of scrimmage. And you talked about the defensive line. It felt maybe like, and maybe there was kind of a message that we're going to have that same kind of overhaul that we had on the offensive line. You've certainly, worked on it. It hasn't been that same kind of transition. Would you say that, opportunities just haven't presented themselves, or it's still a work in progress as far as maybe adding more pieces to the defensive line? And again, I'll have a follow-up.
Yeah, I think that follows the same, probably the same narrative as, so I think to your question, Saran, it's more of, how the free agency evolves and how the draft evolves, but it's on the same narrative as, we don't value corners high. Well, we do. It's just that it doesn't work out. Sometimes we're picking late, or we don't have money in free agency, or, a few guys that maybe other people like, they're off our board for either character or mental, and then, the other guys are gone. And so I think that was very similar with the D line. In fact, I remember going through my final board review with Clark, and I told him, I said, the one position that this draft was very lean in was the interior defensive line. You had some shots there early in the middle, but it wasn't like some of these corners and linebackers and receivers late. I think from a number standpoint, it didn't add up for us. And so when we were picking, there were some defensive linemen on the board, but whether it was corner or, defensive end or safety, we just had higher grades than those guys. So it was really just a quantity thing. I think we're always going to look, and I think certainly my track record shows, we always dump resources at the front, DN, DT. I mean, we're always looking at that. And, I think we actually talked about that when we did the Stallings kid right before the draft started. Like, man, this interior defensive line there's not a ton of numbers here. And we do like the numbers at the end. We're going to try to take a shot at a corner early, but there's a good shot we might get shut out here. And I think it's just from a sheer volume standpoint.
And then free agency. I mean, do you think, I know Melvin Ingram, you've got the tag there, right? That has to play out. But do you think you have, one, the cap space, the resources, everything you need? And do you think there are opportunities out there to still try to add to the defensive line beyond Melvin Ingram?
Well, I think, I think that, we'll be smart, and I think we've approached this offseason with a plan, and we've tried to remain smart in regards to thinking about the next few years. We would love to have Melvin back, and I think we're in a position to do something along those lines. We're also, hopefully we'll pick up the Orlando Brown talk, and depending on how that goes and how it's structured, it may allow for us to do something else, or something that we're not thinking of at this point. But I think we're in a position to do something small, and I think if it makes sense, we would do it. I also think that in the next few weeks here, the Orlando Brown contract stuff will pick up, and how that turns out, may guide us in another direction in regards to what we can add before the season. And it's still a long off season. And like I said, now when you have these drafts and all these players added, you're going to have some counter moves. So teams will start cutting players, and then they may have drafted a player or two at a position they weren't thinking of. Now, all of a sudden, they have a veteran there that maybe they can move on from, or maybe they'll listen to. So I think once you get through these rookie mini camps and these OTA periods, talk will start to pick up again, and some teams, may call about some certain players. I think the good thing for us is that we have some flexibility here. We're not like, oh, we can't do anything, we're stuck. We have picks next year, and we have, I think 2 3s and 2 4s next year. And, I think we have some money now, and depending on how Orlando plays out, we may have, some additional resources depending on how all that is laid out. So I think we always strive to have some flexibility and do what's best for the team. Now, we're not going to just make a move to make a move. I think, we've shown enough discipline over the years, and that, I know we're aggressive, but I think we've shown that we can just be disciplined and let things play out. But I think more than anything, as long as you have flexibility going into any season, I think you're in a really good position. So we'll certainly take calls and listen and see what's out there.
And we'll go last to Matt Derrick. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Brett, you mentioned having some picks next year. By my count, you've got 10 right now. And with the draft in Kansas City, I don't know how much it's going to affect you, since you're going to be in the war room the entire time. But what's the excitement level for next year? And has there been a conscious decision to, not get involved with moving picks for next year because you want to have picks when the draft's in KC?
Well, we're certainly extremely excited about the draft next year. We talked about, actually it was Clark's idea. He mentioned that we should maybe look into getting a room over at Union Station and kind of making that our makeshift draft room, so we can be there and experience what we believe is just going to be a tremendous event. Yes, the only thing that Clark told me was you can't trade next year's 1. We got to have a 1. Other than that, he lets me do what I want to do. But he joked a few times before the draft. Now we got to have a 1 next year. So I certainly I went in with that mindset that I couldn't move the 1. Now I did remind him. I said, I get it. I said, but you do know that Vegas is not using a 1 or a 2. So I had to at least throw that line out there that it's just been done this year. So but look, I think that where we are, and I think what we did this offseason, and taking a step back, knowing that we have a lot of good players and we have a lot of high price players in this team, but also knowing that, our staff does a really good job of evaluating talent. Our coaching staff does a really good job of developing talent. When you can have that amount of picks and really put together a solid plan and stick to it, we're going to turn out some good players here. And I think, we're going to be looking forward to using all of those picks next year, the 1, the 2, the 2 3s and 2 4s, and hopefully add another great class like we did, last year and this year.
Brett, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us.
You bet. Thanks, guys.